I think it's because I was trying to use like a networking library that wasn't meant for VR. It was meant
Hmm.
for like a standard game, and unfortunately, VR has like a lot more requirements, and also when you do custom assets as well on top of that, there's a lot to consider, and sometimes you just don't know what you need to know until you try to do something, and then you learn what you need to know, so then you can go learn it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion. Raptor's not here today. He's going to go pick up his daughter, but we are here joined by.
Hi, my name is Cascadian.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us, Cascadian. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice
Oh,
to meet you too.
well, let's just jump into the meat and potatoes conversation. What are you known for? What got you started, and what got you into VRChat?
Yeah. So, in terms of VRChat, I guess in general, most people online, I'm probably most known for making 3D models, 3D characters for VRChat, such as this one I have currently on. I got into VRChat around, I think, March of 2018. I've been playing for a while, and I came across the game completely by accident. I randomly bought a VR headset one day when I was on break from my university because I thought the technology was cool, and randomly booted up this game and saw you could make 3D models. And I've always wanted to learn how to 3D model. Blender was something I picked up when I was like 13 years old, and it
Oh,
finally
wow.
kind of gave me a specific goal in mind. So I ended up picking that up and making things and then putting them into game. And slowly over time, it became something I just kept doing over and over again. Um, I was among the earlier crowd to get the full body trackers for VRChat,
Hmm.
and around that time, I was just making edits of 3D models. That's what I started out doing, edits and small props. And I realized that like no one had these models for like full body tracking because the requirements were different back then. And so I made like a little avatar world with edited models, and I think I was the first one, if not one of the first, to make a avatar world for VRChat specifically for full body or like full body like ready models, avatars. And so because of that, I got a lot of attention from them, and I would see them all over the place when I'd play the game in public worlds and such. Uh, and so because of that, they gave me a lot of motivation to keep working and making things. Uh, and about a year later, I kind of hit the wall where it was more about like the designs and creativity rather than the technical skill because I kind of learned everything I needed to for doing edits. And I am an engineer, so I went to university for electrical engineering, which I did end up graduating with. Not that I use anymore, but I'm less of an artist. I am an artist because I make art, but I consider myself more of a technical or like an engineering artist.
Hmm.
So instead of focusing on the design aspect, I decided to learn what else I could do to further my technical skills.
Hmm.
I met this funny guy who is now one of my best friends in the game, and he introduced me to the concept of making a full character from scratch because I never even considered it back then, even though I did edited models. I like didn't even consider that I could even do something like that to begin with because that seems like such a large Herculean task. But he showed me that some random person can do it. I'm like, okay, I guess I could try too. So he told me that he wouldn't teach me how to do it, but he'd criticize what I do make to help me out, which is what happened. And from there, I found my new goal, which was to make characters, and that was around 2019. So on and off, I've been doing that, and I have like a booth store or like booth in Gumroad and all that now. And every like 6 months, I'll make a new character. It's kind of like a side thing, but it earns me, good amount of money, enough so where uh, I quit my job about a year or two ago
Oh, wow.
and went because I worked IT for a while after graduating because that's the only job I could find, and I yeah, I quit my job because I was making enough with my saving. Well, I already have big savings, so I had enough to quit and just do 3D, and then spend the rest of my time learning my new passion, which had nothing to do with 3D. It was programming. So yeah, I'm mostly known for 3D models and VRChat because of that. I'm thankful enough where I get to see people use them and run around with them sometimes, and uh yeah, so now I do that. And after I graduated, which is my like more hardware related focus degree, I've just been teaching myself software engineering, like programming, for the past like 2 or 3 years on my own.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's impressive. I have a lot of questions, and I'm going to try and ask
Yeah.
them in order. What
Yes.
initially got you into Blender? You mentioned you started when you were
Mm.
13, and how was that skill transferable when you started, like, figuring out you can make a mix with
Oh
models
yeah.
and stuff?
Yeah. So I basically remembered nothing other than the name of Blender. I remember opening up, looking at Blender Guru's donut tutorial, trying it for a couple hours and giving up multiple times. And so, but I remember for some reason I had that interest was still like deep down in my brain, which I completely forgot about for years until I started playing the game. So yeah, like I really didn't have any transferable skills. I was from scratch. I think literally my first avatar, like edited avatar I tried to upload to the game, took me like 2 weeks because I
Oh,
had that
wow.
many problems, and but I was very persistent, and I didn't want to give up on learning how to do it.
Okay. And you mentioned you had one of the earliest worlds for full body accessible avatars. What were the requirements at the time, and how much of, I guess, I guess, how did the players of VRChat receive a world with full body
Mm.
accessible avatars at the time?
Yeah, so most people still weren't using full body, so people didn't really understand. Like, I had a lot of people asking, like, "Well, what's the difference, right?" And like, would they just look like normal avatars? But back then, I think I some details could be wrong, but I think roughly what was going on is VRChat was using a more like just set version of the VRIK. The final IK is what VRChat used to use. They use a modified version, I think now. But final IK, which is all the how what lets your body move around and have arms and legs track. It had this weird quirk with it where basically you'd have to invert the hip bone, do some alignments. Things had to be like your bones on your model had to be like aligned and positioned in a very certain way. So otherwise, if they weren't, it would cause your hips to like jet out sideways or be flipped, or a lot of like weird issues. I'm not sure exactly why that was the case, but people learned. I didn't figure it out, but someone else told me how to fix that, and I just started doing it to all my stuff. And I've I've never been someone who likes to. I don't have much of a personal connection to my avatars, but I like seeing people use them. So everything I've made up until I started selling stuff has always been public. So that's why I made the public world for it too. Um, it was just because I like sharing the stuff I make.
Okay. Oh, so what was it like seeing your avatars at that moment, like when you published a world and it got popular? What was it like seeing your
It
avatars being used by people?
Oh, yeah, it was the best thing ever. Like I would literally just go and just open up like a public instance of my world and see people join and try it on. And I wouldn't say I didn't say I was the one who made it or anything, but I would just like watch and interact with people and uh like just like even if someone doesn't have anything like great to say about it, just seeing someone in it and use it and like move around is really cool because using an avatar yourself is one thing, but seeing it from like a third person perspective, for me is like a whole different experience. It's like seeing the character I made like come to life instead of like being the character, seeing them their own entity come to life almost.
Oh, okay. When you were first started uploading and making your characters for people to use and messing around with things, were you expecting to have that kind of interaction with people? Seeing someone in a world you made, using avatars you made, is that something thought would happen? Or
When I first started
yeah, when
getting
you
into
first
it,
started? Yeah.
no. So I got into it purely just because uh, I always have some desire to learn something new
Mm.
with my free time. And that was just my interest at the time is, hey, like I wanted to learn how 3D graphics and stuff work. So first it was Blender, then it was like editing existing things and so on. And I really didn't understand the feeling of that until like I made like a really basic world and seeing people interact in the world. And then I made like some edited models and seeing people like try it on because I was like, oh, can you like try it on or if you want to look at it, have fun.
Mm.
Um, my my very first model was this little like a ripped like Yoda model. He had like a little floppy lightsaber, and it had like funny kazoo music and stuff. And like seeing people interact and like do silly things and have fun, um, like really made me happy. Like way more happy than just making the thing. Seeing people
Mm.
use it was dramatically like more rewarding. So that's when I realized I started focusing on that specifically.
So, over the years of all the avatars you made, what have been some of your favorites?
Ooh, I would say I hate everything I make right
You
after I make it.
you do?
um, not less so now. I would say this is my favorite because this is my most recent one.
Hmm.
Uh, but there's the ones that have like, my very first model that gave me a huge break was like my Artoria or my like I used to make a lot of like anime characters, like existing anime characters and make them into 3D
Hmm.
because I'm not a designer. And like doing some of those got a lot of attention and like seeing people enjoy and have fun and reach out has been interesting, but I really don't have a personal connection to any of them. I would say my most recent ones are my favorite just because I've separated myself from making existing characters and just doing like interesting to me designs. I've always only focused on what I like,
Hmm.
and I'm really thankful that just other people also have similar interests and like what I do as well.
Okay. So, for the current age, since you're making your own characters now, where do you drive your inspiration from when you are designing them?
Oh, and that's pretty easy. It's just what I find. I mostly do like female or like I like robotics a lot too, which I want to
Hmm.
get back into. But I do a lot of female characters and then some robots. I want to get do that more. But for robots, it's what I find really cool and mechanical. And for like the female characters, it's just like what do I find attractive or cute? And like inspirations, it comes from just like anything I see where it's like a show I'm watching or maybe someone else's avatar or like friends often will like share like characters that we like or artwork that we like and i'm I'm not very good at like having a whole image. I never know what I'm making until I finish it basically,
Hmm.
but because I'm not very good at that process. But I would say just like the eyes on this, there's an artist I really like, Ida Pochi, who who draws their eyes with like larger white pupils that I really like. So I took that. I watched like there's been a lot of elf characters recently, so I was like, I want to make an elf. I like I saw like a hairstyle that was similar to this. I made that. It's kind of just grabbing pieces from what I like all over the place and mashing them together until something kind of looks okay.
Okay. Now, the first design you, or first avatar character you made from scratch, where did the inspiration from that come, and how did you feel after completing it?
The very first one I made from scratch was this like astronaut looking one, and I made it. It had like an astronaut suit or like a really basic like thin down astronaut suit and like a helmet.
Hmm.
And I mostly chose that because it was easy to not make a face because like head and hair is always the hardest part of a character. I think most people will agree with that. And so to set myself up for success instead of making myself do something really difficult, I decided to sit strategically be like, okay, I like this design or like I'm a big fan of Daft Punk. So for the helmet design, I took some inspiration from one of their helmets and kind of like made it my own and added a few things to make it interesting. Made like a basic body, made it like material, sci-fi material, whatever, and that enabled me to make something that was relatively easy. But like going through the process from start to finish of modeling, UVs, rigging, texturing, all the Unity stuff, like going through that process once is what enabled me to kind of like see where I need to work on, see what's hard, see what's easy, and focus on different areas so I can learn faster.
Mm, okay. Now, you did mention earlier on a friend of yours got you into making your own
Mhm.
characters and then criticized your work. What was the switch like going from kit bashing into designing your own models and having someone review your work at that time?
It it was freeing because, like I said, like
Mm,
I stopped doing edited models mostly because I kind of ran out of things to learn that I cared about learning or like I had the interest in learning about.
mm,
And so being able to have someone who was there to like show me some of these new things I could try out and encouraged me and was there to like tell me, hey, this is good, this is bad, like I think you could do better on this. um that enabled me to not only like learn but like not it gave me motivation because I knew what I need to like learn, because sometimes when you want to start something new you're overwhelmed because you have all these different things to consider and try out, and you're kind of like throwing things around in the dark, hoping you hit something that is like correct or works, and you fail until you succeed. But having like in a way like a mentor um give you feedback will help you kind of narrow your focus on hopefully making a little bit less failures.
mm. Okay.
So that was really nice.
Oh, so another question I have is how, what was the process like for you making a character or assembling one prior to that? And then how did it change after? Did you add
Hmm.
new tools? Did you do things differently from what you did before?
Yeah, so I would say the process, for example, like in Unity is basically the same, but for in Blender, it basically changed everything because you go from having to work on someone else's mesh and model and like rigging and how they work with things to you basically start from the ground up and develop your own workflow. And in some ways, I actually find it easier that way
Mm,
because you know how you do things, you know things that will annoy you and are difficult to work with, so you make them better. I found that in some ways making a 3D model is easier than
mm,
editing an existing one if you're trying to edit a lot about it. Because it was really common to come across things with like bad topology or weird rigging, like things aren't mirrored correctly or aligned. And when you have full control over that when you make something yourself. So it's more work to put in initially, but now it's like my favorite models to work on are my own because I know everything about them. I know how they work. I know what to expect. I can go in and do a major change and it can be pretty painless because I like everything about it.
mm. Okay. So, what is your process making an avatar from scratch
Mm.
like? What do you do from beginning to end?
Yeah, so I always try to get a bunch of reference, get a rough idea of what I want. Like for this model, it was literally just elf, green hair because I haven't made green hair before. I like the pupils of this artist. I like more mature looking characters.
Mm,
So I always go for like more mature style. And I try to do something a little bit different or just something that I would like to see. And so I kind of get all these ideas in mind, get a bunch of like art and images. Maybe it's related, maybe it's not, just for like a mood board basically in a way.
mm,
And I make a body, I I model and I don't care about how it looks too much. Because
mm,
I think that's a really important thing is like things won't look good until the last 80, 90%. So I make a body, like cool,
mm,
like do a block out of a head, block out of hair, and like do everything. And like once you get everything slowly in place, even if it looks really bad, when you have the perspective of like the entire model, it's a lot easier to see what looks bad about it. So if you make a face but you don't have hair, sometimes it's hard to tell like, oh, this face looks off, but it's because, oh, when I put the hair on it, I can see that the eyes are too high up. Or when you make a body and you put a head on it, you can go, oh wait, like my shoulders are too wide because my head puts it into perspective. So go through, block out. Once I get everything roughly in place, I then start to refine. I used to never sculpt. Everything I do is basically hand modeled. But and I've just preferred that way because I'm not an artist again, so like sculpting with like a brush or something is a lot more difficult than saying I need this here, here, here. I've gotten really good with like tools that make that easier in Blender, but yeah, as everything, of course, I slowly am learning more to become an artist by doing things like sculpting after I make a character. So after I do all the modeling, I will go through and do a pass, and I'll actually sculpt on everything if I need to, like folds, wrinkles, details. You can take that and actually use it in your texturing process to guide you. So with stylized models, which is what I do, you don't really want to use like your like sculpted textures directly because you like project them you bake them onto like your normal version of your model. But I use them as a guideline basically for when I hand paint textures to understand how things should look and feel. And for clothing, you can get away with being more realistic, but less so on the bodies. So yeah, Blender model, I'll sculpt some. Rigging, I've never had problems with rigging. Basically, the entire 95% of the time on any model is modeling and texturing. Texturing is my weakest point because I'm not an artist, I'm an engineer, so having to work with brushes and colors and color theory and understanding like how you'd layer on things to make has always been really challenging, but that's why I have artist friends who can give me advice or tell me it looks bad, and I can do slightly better and call it good. So my process is always changing as I learn more or have the confidence to spend more time on models, because that's an important thing. Is once I get a certain way into the project, I require myself to finish it, even if it's not up to the standard I want. I always make sure I finish a project after a certain length, like certain amount of time into it, because you are always your biggest critic, and even if I don't like it, maybe other people will, and that has almost always proven to be true. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
I have another question as well, since as well as I remember hearing from someone a while ago, one of the ways some artists get used to making the human form is they were taught using a clay and making the model by their hands, layer by layer, bones, then the muscle, then the skin. For modeling your avatars yourself, has been mimicking the human form been difficult for you, or is it quite easy to get into? How did you learn that part?
Yeah. So surprisingly, like obviously when you start, there's a lot you don't consider about your own body, like the human body. That makes sense. It's kind of been a very natural process over time where I'll make a body. I'm like, I know it's not good. I know it's not perfect, but it has like the rough idea of what I need. And then every time I make a model, I make everything from scratch. I don't reuse the body. I don't reuse the head. I make everything because that's my way of forcing myself to do what you're talking about, which is like learn the anatomy, learn like how to make things better. So instead what I do is, since I can't like do layers since I'm not sculpting, what I'll do is I'll make the block out and then I go, okay, I know there's a muscle group here. I know there's like bones here. I know like there's this definition I need to achieve. And so I'll modify my topology. I'll, sculpt on or move around the vertices to help get to that. And thankfully, A lot of like stylized characters, you don't need like a lot of definition. It's mostly just the silhouette you care about because textures will do a lot of the rest for you.
Hmm.
Um, so that's good. But usually I'll make a character and I'll be like, wow, I feel really good about this body. And then I'll put it into game, I'll use it for a while. And then slowly all the little things start piling up like, oh, this hand is weird, the back is weird, this shape or length of this is weird. I take all those notes in my head and next time I make a body, I'm like, okay, there's more to there's more to my knowledge of what not to do. And honestly, not the most efficient way of learning how to make things or study anatomy, but persistently over the past like what 5 6 years of doing this off and on, like making things over and over again, I've just accumulated that knowledge as I've needed it instead of specifically studying it.
Oh wow. So when did you start making models and when did you get into VRChat specifically? What has been the hardest thing in that time frame as well that you've had to learn with what you're doing?
The hardest thing I've had to learn has been probably head, face, and hair, and mostly this hair now. I've kind of
Mm.
like I'm really focused on the bodies when I started, like specifically trying to make that better every time. And then I started doing faces, and now I'm the last like big thing that's a huge stopper is just hair now, which is there's so many different ways to make hair. There's so many
Mm.
ways to texture hair. There's so many ways to like present and fit it that everyone has their own way of doing it. No one really has a set way. No one really wants to teach you how to do it because no one's confident in their own way. I feel like some people are, I'm sure, but a lot of us aren't, including me. Um, Currently, what I'm stuck on right now. But yeah, there'll always be something challenging because when you learn things, they become easy to you, right? So they seem easy. So then the so then like your new goals are the ones that are challenging to you. So like obviously I feel like I suck at hair, but also like I made this hair, which it's not too bad. And if me from 2 years ago, so I made this, I'd be like, wow, what the heck? Like that's so good. Like how did I do that? So keeping in mind the perspective, my friend told me something about like an artist curve where it's like you learn and then your expectations, your knowledge of your art is more starts to become more than the actual skill. And so like you feel like you're worse than because your knowledge and what you know about art and how you assess yourself is at a higher level. So then you catch back up to that level and it's kind of like up and down, up and down. It's not that you're
Mm.
getting worse, it's just that you're learning more, you're experiencing more, you can understand and critique yourself better. And so I try to keep that in mind where it's like, I made this thing, I can be happy with it. Even if I don't think it's good now, I can still appreciate it and be happy. But I also have this new goal, and that's the thing I'm going to focus on.
Mm. Okay. So when you're trying to learn some parts like the human anatomy or hair, hands,
Hmm.
face, what steps did you take to try and improve yourself, mask, when you were learning to make those?
The steps I took to improve myself would be like I would ask my friends sometimes, like my mentor I talked about, or just some other people I put some random discords and see what people said. A lot of times people are wrong actually with their feedback. Even if
Mm.
they're like a lot of times even if they're like pretty skilled, sometimes like whether it's because of art style or their personal preference, like taking everything with a grain of salt is really important. Um, and going with what you feel looks good, I think is important as well because a lot of what I do is still very inaccurate, like very, very like not proper.
Mm.
But if I look at it and it looks decent, and other people look at it and it looks pretty decent or good, then I think like that's what's important. The accuracy to like being like accurate to like how hair should work or how a body should look is less important than how you want it to look or what looks nice to people. Um, so That's what I would say. And so if there is something that's obvious that I know I need to improve, though,
Hmm.
I will simply. Sometimes I do open up Anatomy for Sculptors. That is a book I use sometimes. I will look at real body references. I try not to look too much at like art, like stylized art, because stylization is in the name a stylization of real life. And so instead of basing something that's based off something else, you should base it off the thing that thing is based on, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Basically,
it makes sense.
basing it off of a real person, even if that's not what you want it to look like, understanding why it looks like that helps you stylize it in a way that doesn't look off or weird.
Hmm.
That's what I try to think about.
Okay. I have another question for you as well. Over the avatars you've made, what have been some of your, I'd say, your audience or your people who enjoy your avatars? What have been some of their favorites of your avatars, if you know any of that?
Hmm. Yeah. I would say their favorites have been the previous model I made, which is like more of like an office lady kind of style, more mature look like this one
Hmm.
I have. There's surprisingly like my audience. I don't know a lot of my audience. I know some people, and like they basically have the same tastes as I do, so I think
Hmm.
that's why they're my audience, of course. But um, I've been lucky, I think, that I've never had one standout. I've never
Hmm.
had one standout where it's like this thing is like 5x, 10x better than everything else I've made, and it's sold that much better. I've had some ups, some downs, but I've always been consistently growing, consistently like whatever new thing I make has done like to my expectations or usually better.
Hmm.
And I think since I just stick true to like what I like, my audience, which is has similar tastes and interests that I do, I think generally will like it. Not always. Some people hated that I put these ears on this model, but I said, "Hey, I like them. I'm sorry." And it sold great. It sold just fine. And I don't I will sometimes make small adjustments I think that more people will like rather than just me. But I never compromise like my vision too much. And yeah, I would say my most popular is usually my most recent or second most recent one. So I hope that that trend keeps
Hmm.
up and it's a slow, increase.
Hmm. I have another question as well. When you're selling avatars, you mentioned that you like to keep to your vision versus what will sell better. Why do you go by that model? Why does that resonate with you?
The biggest thing is motivation.
Hmm.
Like I do this. I, I've gone on and off full time, part time, whatever. But right now I'm spending most of my time doing. Like I'm a contractor on a VR game.
Hmm.
So I've spent most of my time doing programming for that. But like even before, it's like I I want to enjoy what I make and I want to believe in what I make and like I could maybe optimize my designs or what I do for something that might sell better. But the thing is, I have a lot of artist friends who are not as like who haven't been as lucky as I have that even though they're more skilled than I am, they try to like they've been trying for years to find something that works with like something that they can make that'll sell really well and they still like sometimes fall short. And it's like, well, I don't want to spoil what I have. I enjoy what I make, like, and other people enjoy what I make, even if it's not like a huge number. Um, I think like as I get better, people are liking my models even more. So instead of like abandoning what me and others like, I want to just support. I want to support the idea that I have because find what's more motivating than liking something you make. So I first and foremost, it's just about what I like. Second, it's what the people I'm around like. Like the people who buy my stuff, the people who like to share. I'm very fortunate that I have a lot of friends who not only support me, but they actually really like what I make, which is like crazy to me that I'll like release a model and some of my like friends I hang out with all the time like use them and like even when I'm not around. And like that's like really special to me. So it's like obviously I'm doing something right and I don't see a reason to change it. I'm very fortunate that I don't have money problems.
Mm.
I'm not rich, but I'm not like struggling for money, and I'm very frugal with how I live. And I'm very thankful that I can be in this position where I can work for myself and have my own business and do 3D and programming and have like a variety of things to do. So that's, yeah, the biggest reason why is like I want to enjoy what I make, because if I think I wouldn't 3D model as much, or I might even stop if I didn't enjoy the things I made. Because it's not about the money, it's about making the thing, but the money lets
Mm.
me do it even more.
Mm.
So,
Okay. Now, you mentioned before that at one point you're able to switch to your making of things in VR full time and you quit your job you're working at the time. What was it like making the switch, and have you viewed VR any differently from when you were working the job and doing it versus like being able to lean
mm,
on what you do?
yeah, so I I basically always had the plan of like I kind of want to just do this. I kind of just want to do my own thing. And so even when I took the job, I kind of always had in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to stay at this job. The job turned out to be really good. I basically sat around for half the day doing nothing, and I
Mm.
taught myself programming on my work computer because no one was around. uh, and then I'd also 3D model a bit, and then evenings I 3D model. And I basically told myself like, hey, if I can have X amount of savings, and if I can make X amount a month at least, and I'm confident I can do that while working full time, then I feel comfortable with quitting and working even more so I can, basically I was like, I have this goal in mind. If I can reach that goal of like making money and saving money, then I can go do it. And I hit that goal. And at the same time, like my work got worse because I got a new like manager and it was not fun. And I was like, well, I guess I can just do it now. And I was really scared to do it, and I was still living with my parents at the time. So not only did I quit my job, I quit my job and moved from cities to a new city. So I was alone and jobless. Uh, so that was a big switch. But thankfully I have supportive friends who like um, well, supportive friends, but also like I've spent a lot of my yeah, another big thing that gave me the confidence to quit my job is I had about 2 years ago, I think, I realized that I didn't socialize enough. And so I made it a point to get on VR and specifically socialize with people in the industry, like people who work in VR. I'd like to meet more 3D people, like character modelers specifically, but we all keep to ourselves, I guess, or something, because I don't really know too many. I know some, but I help run a community of like specifically 3D artists with a friend. Well, my mentor actually, him and I together run the community, but I don't really know many people who do like who are on the same level and do more similar to what I do. Um, I'd like to meet more, but it's not really worked out. But I made a focus a couple years ago to reach out and network more with people in the VR industry and tech in general, because there's like a pretty good crowd of people on VRChat for that. And that's how I ended up meeting a lot of my friends I currently have now, and another best friend of mine actually, who is very supportive and I've done a lot with, and who I'm currently working on our game project now with actually. So kind of like a lot of small things came together. The job that gave me time, the networking and meeting new people, um, pushing myself to work after I got out of work to make more money. But eventually, it all was set in place, and I've had a bad history, or in the past, not bad history, but like I've had a history of like not doing, doing the easy thing, doing the comfortable, like I could stay at this job and work and be fine. So I pushed myself saying, hey, I have this backup money. I can be okay if something goes bad and doesn't work out. It's worth the risk. And I took that risk. And I've learned that taking more risks and getting out of your comfort zone is really important. And it's something I've continuously been trying to do more and more as the years have gone on. That was kind of like the starting point for me really pushing to do that.
Oh, wow. So when you were doing all this growing, learning, and socializing, has VRChat, have you viewed it any differently as a player and a
Oh,
creator?
yeah. Yeah. So the first couple years I played VRChat, I played it a lot, and it was just a social thing. Like I made like my 3D models and stuff, but no one else really did that. I was in my just for some reason the people, the friends I knew, I was like the only person who worked on or did anything. Like everyone else was socialized pretty much. Maybe did some edits here and there. And so it wasn't until I started 3D modeling from scratch, like a year and a half, that I started meeting some people who made things, and that's how like I got introduced to like more of the creator side of VRChat. But even then, I didn't really socialize because I didn't really see like the reason to. I just befriended people who I became friends with. Um, and yeah, wait, I got what was your
Oh,
question?
once you started, as you said, socializing with more people in the industry and
Oh,
growing in this
how did it
time frame,
change?
how did you have you viewed
Yeah,
VRChat any differently from like a player and a creator standpoint? Hello, I'm actually here to interrupt the episode you're watching really quick to ask you a favor. Please come join us at any of the other locations we have. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify, both of which we post our episodes and are very up to date on both. We have Discord where you go to hang out all the time, where you're gaming and shooting the breeze over with many people over that way. Feel free to come join us. I invite you. If you wish to support us, we have a Patreon where we post a bunch of random bits, bobs, and extra podcasts every once in a while for you to go enjoy. Also, if you wish to support us while in VRChat, we're now part of the creator economy. So please come join if you wish to support us there. It's there for you to choose if you so wish. And thank you very much. And a special thanks to some of the people who have signed up on our Patreon, which are as follows, and I have written down so I'll remember. And that's a tough thing. Forbidden Zero, Niche, Aliquum, Future Oracle, Lesser Capybara, and Frozen. Thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
yeah. So it became a social, and then as I started meeting some people who make things, it became more of like I just pivoted from playing socially to like mostly just making stuff for the game because I found I
Mm.
enjoyed making stuff more than playing the game. And so for a while, I mostly stopped playing VRChat and I just focused and like I had friends who were like who'd play. I'd sometimes get on, but it's mostly just I'd only really play once I finished making something. And I'm like, I have something new. I can play the game now. It was like my reward for finishing something. Um, and then when I started networking with people and going out of my way to meet people, I started, playing more socially, but specifically focusing on like, hey, there's all these super smart people who are way smarter than me in this game. Like, I think I can do a 2-for-1. I can socialize more, which I need to do, and I can learn from them passively just by talking or listening. And so I started focusing on that a lot. So then VRChat went from a social tool to a creation tool to then like kind of like a merge of like social and creation and like learning because I wanted to not just be a 3D modeler, but I wanted to be a like an engineer or like someone who like because I'm basically interested in anything like technical related, unfortunately, because I get sidetracked a lot, but on learning different things. But it gave me that it gave me that reason to get back on the game because I kind of got tired of getting on and kind of doing nothing with my time. I've become more restless. I feel like I need to be learning or working or doing something most of the time nowadays. That's how
Mm.
my brain's turned out to be. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Mm.
And nowadays I play probably the least I have ever, but I still try to get on once or twice a week, socialize, say hi. I should probably network more and do things, but life gets busy. Traveled to I've been socializing in person more, and like I've gone to Japan a couple times in the past years and met up. I meet up with like VR chat people and creators and developers and stuff. So like we get to go do that and have fun. So
Mm.
I still keep up with people.
Okay. Ooh. So, with that being said, with I want to ask about the VRChat avatar thing they put in. Do you intend on applying what you've made for the new VRChat avatars market?
Yeah. I'd love to. It's been kind of weird because like all like and it's not just me saying it, like it's like a bunch of my friends who are also like into avatar creation feels like I'm just yeah, I've been keeping up with it. I wasn't I wasn't able to get into the like beta whatever thing first, unfortunately. And it's which is fine, but like I'm still kind of waiting on my application. I do plan on adding my stuff there when I can, but for some reason, even though I applied like months ago to get in, and I've reapplied and talked with I've had people like who work with the game or people related to that like be like, "Oh, you're not in there?" I'm like, "Nope, I just haven't gotten a chance to." But there's so many people. There's like thousands of applications, I'm sure. So I'm patiently waiting for my time, doing my other work, and then yeah. But I'm excited to see what the avatar market does for VRChat. Um,
Mm.
I'll be using it for sure.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned prior that you switched, or way in the beginning, that at one point you switched to doing programming. What prompted that switch? And since you spent a lot of time
Mm.
making avatars, was it an easy switch going from one to the other?
Yeah. I mentioned that I went to my university and graduated. I graduated in electrical engineering, but it's
Mm.
more related to like computer engineering, which is like,
Mm.
I learned how to like program embedded systems, like write firmware, design microprocessors, like that kind of thing. Like that was my
Mm.
degree. So I did learn programming, but it was all like low level, like like not application or game related stuff. It was very like different use case for like physical hardware. And so um I didn't think I'd like it, but I ended up go like my concentration for electrical engineering has like three different ones, and one of them is the hardest, which is the computer focused one with the microprocessor stuff and all that. Out of my class of like 30 people, three of us did that concentration. Everyone
Mm.
else did something else because it was known to be really hard. But I did it because I actually ended up. I always thought I'd hate programming, which is why I never did it
Mm.
for until I went to my university. And so I was like, wait, oh, I actually do like this. Cool. So I like did my little thing with that, and since I started playing, so I was gaining interest in programming throughout my degree with doing that. Then as I was doing characters in my free time and using Unity, I'm like, oh, people write these like tools for Unity that like help you do things. I'm like, that's really cool. So I started in my free time, which is already basically none. I stopped doing as much homework as I should have. I did just enough homework at my university to pass, and I spent all my free time learning to 3D model and program. But
Mm.
uh, I learned programming on the side too. Like I made like Unity tools to like automate things and do things for myself.
Mm.
I started learning like Python and Blender, so I can make Blender tools, which actually just recently I actually made like a full like shape key panel. Um, Basically I replaced the shape key panel in Blender with my own. It has like folders and a bunch of extra tools and all these things that like make my workflow easier.
Mm.
Um, and same thing with Unity. I've made a bunch of tools that also like make my workflow easier, do things that I want to do easier. And I again like I like publish them, and mostly it's just for personal projects because I like learning that. And I had I made like a motion capture software for VR where like I I made like basically like something like VRChat where you have a character with like move around in full body in VR in my own Unity application. And I use that to like record your movements and export an animation for it. Um, and a bunch of like random side projects that I never really fully finished or published, but because every time I would learn and I'd learn all these like new programming things or learn a new language, and I'd realize how awful I was, and then I would want to redo everything.
Mm.
Um, so it's basically been a lot of that over the past few years as well, and become more confident in it. And now I'm getting into like doing like full like larger projects. I basically stopped working like a year ago for like 6 months. I basically
Mm.
stopped all my work and just focused on making a uh it's it's abandoned now. I'm not working anymore. I might pick it up someday, but it's basically like think about like a platform like VRChat. It's like a VTuber program, but instead of for like for 3D models, but instead of like tracking like your face, and being like a normal VTuber program, it was like you could have a full character and move around in a scene like in VRChat. So it was a VTuber program, but with like some VRChat features, and I had custom avatars, I had custom worlds, I had an SDK, I had networking, I had player voice chat, and like cameras, and like I was really into it. I was doing all this stuff, and it was like the first big project I ever worked on, and a lot of stuff now I do different that I've learned, and I stopped working on it after a while because it just took so much time. But um, that was like my big thing that taught me a lot, and it was really fun.
Hmm. Well, would you mind if I ask about that a little bit? What prompted
Mhm.
that idea to make that VTuber program you spent so much time
Oh,
on, and what kinds of things
yeah.
did you learn from working on it?
So my big thing was like VTubers are they're still pretty big, but they were even
Mm,
bigger like a year or two ago, and like it frustrates me when I see like a 3D. I don't really care about VTubers. I'm not like a VTuber person. They're cool. Like I appreciate them, but I'm not into them personally. I don't watch or do anything with that. But I love the technology behind it.
mm,
And basically anything I do revolves around some way for like VR.
mm,
Whether it's directly related to VR or whether it's like like something that can be used for VR. Like ever since I got a VR headset, anything I do has some relation back to VR because I love VR so much. And so like I was like, okay, cool. I want to learn how, and characters specifically I love because I'm a character artist. So like
mm,
anything with like VR and characters sounds really fun to me. And so I was like, I've always wanted to, find a reason to make something, even if it's not like super useful to everyone. So like I started working on this program that basically is like a very niche purpose of like basically people who want to do VTubing in VRChat because VRChat has like the full character. They have a camera, they can move around like a 3D scene because
mm,
there's no VTuber programs that do that. But VRChat has a lot of downsides or a lot of like restrictions because it's a social game. So I wanted to strip out the social element of like a VRChat style game, but keep the sandbox element and custom things, and then integrate all the VTuber streaming and like support and stuff like that, and merge that into one, which not too many people need, and so many people every time I told them about the project would always go like, that doesn't sound that useful because there's these programs who already do things, and it's like it's a very niche use, but most of all it was just a reason for me to learn about how to like make all this stuff. Like I've never done like proper networking before. Haven't done like a full character controller for VR. Like I've never
mm.
done custom assets. I've never done all this stuff. So it's basically like, there we go. I finally found a reason to dive into it, and like I like learning things, but I have to have a goal because the goal will let me focus and like gives me a path to work on. Because if you don't have a path, for me, if I don't have a path like where like a goal,
Mm.
then I can get distracted and all these things happen. I want to learn all these things. I never make any progress. So the progress is motivating. So I have the goal. I just try to achieve that goal and learn the things I need to get there. And that goal made me learn a lot of things I've been wanting to learn. So it worked out really well.
Mm. Okay. So through that process, what have been some of the tougher things to learn in coding, and how did you overcome
Mm,
those issues?
yeah, definitely. Uh, Networking is the hardest thing I've done. But I think it's because I was trying to use like a networking library that wasn't meant for VR. It was meant
Mm,
for like a standard game, and unfortunately, VR has like a lot more requirements. And also when you do custom assets as well on top of that, there's a lot to consider. And sometimes you just don't know what you need to know until you try to do something, and then you learn what you need to know, so then you can go learn it. Same thing with like my
mm,
3D modeling, where I said you kind of fail and then you learn what not to do and what the right things are. Same thing with the programming is like the networking, and then also like it's hard, but it's hard for me to say it was difficult because I really like it, but like character IK and movement and like physics and like that's kind of my specialty. And so um even though that was also really, really hard. And it's like what most people struggle with, I think, when they try to make a social or like not social, but like a VR game with like a character. That's why you always have floating hands in VR games, because handling arms, handling IK, handling a body is very annoying. But I love that stuff. So like that one wasn't as difficult for me. But yeah, networking and characters are like definitely the very challenging parts of that.
Okay. And since you spend an awful lot of time learning avatars and character models, starting with what kinds of things became easy to you doing that VTuber program?
Um, I'm not really sure. Like, I think everything stays difficult because when you learn something, like you're like, okay, I figured it out. Okay, now this is the next problem. Like, there's always gonna be more problems to solve. Like, when you're doing something, even if you get it to work, it could always work better. Can always like, you know, there's always can do something more. Like on the current game I'm working on with some people, I'm in charge of the player and the player controller and interactions and all that. And like I've had to basically remake like a full IK solution, like from scratch, and it's been a really like rewarding and fun journey. Also really difficult to like consider like how does a body move? How do you want like how is it like when I move my head, the shoulders know like where they should be and how the arms connect in, and like a lot of times with programming, the solution is simple, but arriving at the solution is the complex part. So there's a lot
Mm.
of critical thinking, there's a lot of keeping track of what to do, there's a lot of like math too, which I love math. I don't like learning math, but once I learn math, I like using it. So I get to do a lot of that and use it from like my engineering, you know, classes, and so yeah, that's
Mm.
that's basically what I've ended up with so far.
Okay. Now you mentioned it a couple of times, and I'm curious, and I'm sorry if I'm going to ask this question, but what is this game you're working on someone else with, may I ask? That you're doing IK
Yeah, so I'm
stuff.
working with a couple other people, and like I'm not we're still like we're like 6 months in, but it's still like something I haven't really talked about like how much we want to talk about or not, so I'm not going to mention it too much.
Mm.
But it's basically like it's a game for the quest, adventure puzzle with emphasis on physics and stuff. So it's basically been like in a way it's been a sandbox for me to make like my ideal player controller, or something similar to it,
Mm.
where not only do you have like hands and arms that you can move around, but it's like a full like physics space. So you can pick yourself up and push things around, and have things push against you, and kind of like Boneworks, Bone Lab style. Hopefully not as floaty. Like we want to do something that's still comfortable, but
Mm.
like yeah, it's been really fun. So our game is still like a very long ways away from
Okay.
completion, but we'll probably talk about it more like when we get into it. So it's still far away.
Okay. Well, whenever you're ready to talk, at the point of talk about it, I'd love to have you back and hear about it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Oh, and another question I have, a couple of them actually, because you mentioned networking and IK. How
Hmm.
also the networking? How is networking for VR different from the like a normal game networking system? Because you mentioned that you used a library that
Yeah.
wasn't meant for it.
Hmm. So, like for example, like VRChat's a really good example of like why networking is for VR is hard. So, a long time ago, VRChat used to send when you like network, right? You're synchronizing things between all the different people. And so what VRChat used to do is they used to synchronize the controller points, or like the tracking points, right? So your head, your hands, your feet, your hip, and they would run all the math to calculate where your arms should be positioned, right? Locally. So I
Mm.
would be running your IK and everyone else's IK. That's a lot of computation that's being done over and over again for every person.
Mm.
So like what they had to do to make the performance better is like instead of calculating the IK for everyone else, I only calculate my own, and everyone else sends their data of the entire position of their skeleton to to everyone else. It's like I'm sending my full like all my bone rotation data to you right now.
Mm.
But in doing that, that's a lot of data. So you have to compress it. You have to optimize it. You have to like make it so it looks good while still being like the minimum possible you can do. Like that's one example of like something that, and that's why IK nowadays in VRChat doesn't look as smooth all the time. But that's why the performance is much better because of that. So like that's one solution. Another solution is like a lot of networking libraries assume that you have all the objects you have when you build the game and when you start it and you set up. In VRChat, or in any game, like VR game that has custom assets, you can just load an asset, like bam, here's something, and the network library needs to know how to handle something new that just pops up, because that's not normal. That usually we know what we're doing when we build the game, but this wasn't here when I built the game. Like, what do I do with it? And so like you basically, I'm sure there are some libraries that like have all these like figured out for you, but you still have to do some like things that aren't things with it that it's not meant to do or didn't think about to get those things to work. And so yeah, like I don't know, have you had anyone on here yet that has done worked on Basis?
Yes, we've talked with Dooley a little bit as well.
Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So funny fact, I believe I was the first contributor on the Basis project.
Oh.
I didn't do much. I basically, all I did was make OpenVR, so like Steam VR, work, because there's OpenVR and OpenXR. And I helped with the OpenVR implementation. Although I think they're getting rid of that since they've figured out how to do the rest of the stuff with OpenXR, because OpenXR is like incomplete. But anyways, like Basis, for example, like Dooley has basically done his own networking. Like he's not using a library or anything because like you need to optimize because you have so much stuff you need to send over and synchronize, as well as like there's a lot of special cases for custom content and for like VRChat stuff. And like he's done the same thing with like networked IK, where like you send over all the bone transforms. Like the Basis project is an example of like it's probably better just to make your own networking library and do the things you want to do. One, for optimization, two, for like ease of getting VR specific stuff to work. I'm not an expert, so like, there could be other things to consider or that are easier or harder, but from what I understand, like those are some of the big things.
Mm. I can only imagine networking a lot like working on avatars, as you mentioned earlier in the conversation. Building your own assets will probably also makes it a lot easier to work on them since you know what is in those things.
Exactly. Yeah, that's always the balance with anything, like whether you're making models or programming. It's like, sure, I can just use this library or this thing that someone else did, but if I want to do any changes or do something out of its scope, then it's going to maybe make my life more difficult than just doing it myself. Sometimes it's a trap because you end up wanting to do everything your own. I'm one of those people who like I like to do everything myself and use as little help as possible, but sometimes it's just very advantageous to use something that exists if it's close enough. So.
Oh, now you mentioned Basis, and I've talked with a few people from within that sphere, like Basis and Visa. Well,
Visakai,
the Rust engine.
Oh yeah.
My brain's kind of small, so I apologize ahead of time. I'm sorry. But
it's all right. I can't keep up with Rust either.
Well, I'm like, how did you find that Basis in that sphere of people, and how did you feel seeing them after finding out about the project, meeting Dooley and everybody? How did you feel about that when you found it? There's all the people working on the kind of project.
So I've known a lot of these people before, like Basis was a thing and stuff. Like I've been friends with I never talked to Dooley too much. Like Dooley's more of like friends of friends for a while, but a little bit before and then during when Basis started, I was like reaching out more and interested in working because like it sounds like a fun project to do, right? Like it's something like I can learn things and learn from him because he's a very talented programmer and I look up to him for that. So I'm like, I can see how he makes things and I can contribute too and stuff. Those are my thoughts with that. And yeah, it's funny because like a lot of these people in these communities of like Basis and Visakai and others, it's like the Rust XR community people, like a lot of these people have been around. We kind of like already know each other, like a lot of us. There's some new people, of course, but it's kind of like funny just to be like, oh, hey, yeah, you're finally here. Like we've been expecting you, like to find this kind of thing. So I'm not involved with the community anymore as I was when it was kind of first starting before Basis was public. But like even now I try to stop by sometimes and keep up and do things. But it's like my brain is already occupied with all my work and my hobbies and interests. So it's like to have a whole project to keep track of is so much for me.
Okay, that's fair. And a question I like to ask, just for my own curiosity's sake, from when you first bought the VR headset that got you into VRChat and everything, did you expect the journey that you've been on since you've come here and building and creating?
Not at all. I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life after I graduated from a university, but I'm like,
Mm.
well, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm just going to do the hardest thing I can manage, which was that program at the time, and figure it out from there. I know I like technical stuff. I don't know what stuff specifically, so I'll just do that. Buying the VR headset was something I was really liked VR when I was younger, but I never like had I didn't even know like the Vive existed. I bought a Vive headset. And like back then it was like Oculus and Vive, and I didn't know what the difference was. I didn't really understand. All I knew was like the Vive was more expensive. It was $100 more. So I'm like, I'll buy the more expensive one, assuming it's better. I'm glad I did. But like I just bought it assuming I'd like play games for a bit here and there and have fun, and that's what I did for like a week because I was on like spring break.
Mm.
And then I randomly got in VRChat, and immediately got in VRChat. I was just using whatever default models. I was walking around laughing, having fun. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. And I found myself continuously going back to VRChat. And then that's when I like, and after playing VRChat longer, I'm like, wait, this VR thing is like so cool. Like, I actually have like a personal interest in like in this technology. And I started making things. I started learning about how it all works, like how the base stations work, how the headset works, the display panels, like researching that just for fun. I'm like, hey, I don't have a goal, but I have a goal now. I'm like, I want to do something related to VR. I don't know if it's just if it's like doing the hardware. I don't know if it's doing the software. I don't know if it's just making content for it. But I like VR a lot, and anything related to VR is like what I want to focus and like be around. So whatever I can do, as long as it's VR like related somehow, like I think I'll be happy. So that's why I kind of do a bunch of random VR related stuff because anything's good for me.
Mm. You know, the longer I've been in VRChat, I'm starting to think there are two kinds of people who interact with VRChat. There are those who mirror dwell and get bored and leave, and then those who feel like contributing. And usually, a lot of the times, it's kind of a similar story to whole. I met the ones who want to contribute, like what you're doing, or many others, clubs, events, you name it. It always generally starts with I met a guy who taught me a thing. Now I'm doing this. Kind of similar to you met a friend who convinced you to learn from scratch, and then you're making all these avatars involved in other projects. It seems to a very common trend to those who kind of take VR and VRChat more seriously than mirror dwelling, drinking night, I'm bored, leaving.
Yeah. Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Like there's a like the people who've been playing a long time, there's like there's a lot of small groups and separations and crossovers, but there's like one kind of more distinctive line, which is like the people who get on here just to socialize still and like distract themselves, and then the people who are like on here because they like the networking, like they still want to socialize, but they're kind of like they socialize in the context of like developing or creating or doing kind of like fun stuff. Again, there's lots of crossovers. Doing both is good sometimes. But yeah, like for sure, I did evolve from being someone who just would like, play VRChat for fun. I even had like a point in my life where like I did like mirror dwell. Like I did just like kind of sit around and not do much. And I realized I'm like, hey, I don't like doing this. I feel shitty. Like, I don't like sitting around and doing nothing. And so like I'm not gonna get on this game until I make something. And that's where I said back where I was like, oh, I finished a model, I can play again. Like that was always my thing.
I can appreciate that. And Raptor says this all the time, but I'm going to regurgitate so he's not here. It's people like you that keep this game fresh and very fun to play. Without people like you making avatars to come in or worlds being built, it'd be still very few worlds probably sitting in front of a mirror. So I just want to say thank you for contributing to this wonderful economy we all
Oh,
enjoy.
oh yeah, no, thank you. And like, yeah, and I feel bad because like I do make avatars, but like it is crazy. There are some people especially who do like so much for this game and make so many cool worlds and avatars. And like I like VRChat, I like making stuff for it, but I've always had the personal philosophy where it's like, as much as I like this game specifically, like I like my own career more.
Mm.
As
Yeah.
in like, as like I like making stuff for VRChat, but I'm not going to make the things I make like I'm not making it for VRChat. I'm making my for myself and for the people who play VRChat. And
Mm.
if VRChat goes away sometime, or if like, things change and I don't want to like, and I lose motivation to make stuff for VRChat specifically, that doesn't matter because I still make things for people. There's other things, other platforms, like other interests. Like as much as I like playing VRChat, I've always been involved with all of the different social like VR games or like creation stuff in general.
Mm.
Um, this is like the cornerstone, right? Like the anchor kind of one. But the thing I like more is the community of people in VR, in VR
Mm.
chat. Like that's the thing I really like.
Mm. How many other platforms have you tried or been through, may I ask?
Oh, a lot. I had like so starting from like older ones, like there was Alt Space before that shut down. Uh, uh, what am I? High Fidelity before that shut down. There was it what was before Resonate or was it Resonate?
It was Neos
Um,
before Resonite. Then they
Neos.
had the
I
funky
played
crypto
some
thing,
Neos.
and then they
Yeah,
did.
yeah. I played Neos a bit. Um, I had some like I had like friends like Earbell and some others who I've known from VR chat who go over and so like I talk with them. And then I played like High Fidelity had a bunch of spin-off like because it was like all of it was like open source. So like there's like Tivoli I think was it's called and some others. Um, I know there's more too, and then there's also been like projects which I've helped like before they were ready, like I've worked on a couple other like kind of startup social VR like platforms and stuff, and
Mm.
like there was like one like a while back that like some like friends were like making called like Lavender, and like I was like part like of helping with that a bit, and like a bunch of other like projects here and there, and because I think like as much as I like how big this game is, something I found, and this is something I found specifically in High Fidelity,
Mm.
was I love the small community. I kind of miss that, where it's like you get on, it's the same 30 people you can see, and they're very like they get on like pretty regularly, and you can see them, and you see the developers, they're involved. Like I imagine it's like how VRChat was in like 2017, 2016, right?
Mm.
And like you get to know everyone and there's like a lot of discovery, there's a lot of new things to do, and there's a lot of like excitement for it, and like that excitement is something I really miss, like for like the platform you're on. And there's some
Mm.
excitement for this platform with like the avatar market and stuff, some excitement for other platforms too. um so there's always something to look forward to, but yeah, like those things specifically I really like.
Mm. So the question is, with all these platforms you've tried and been around, what keeps you coming back to VRChat? What makes it stand out?
Oh, that's the reason I keep coming to VRChat is one, it's still the best, like it's still like the main reason why I sell a bunch of 3D models, and two is like I have like a bunch of friends here, like both personal friends who I just like to talk to and hang out with, as well as like there's this really good community of like-minded individuals where
Mm.
it's all techie people, but it's techie people who like VR, which is like exactly the type of friends I like to be around a lot of.
Mm.
Uh, and so like because of that, it's like yes, there's communities outside of VR chat, but VR chat gives you like kind of a reason to specifically socialize instead of being distracted, like working on stuff and then being like absent from the conversation, right? It makes you focus. So yeah, definitely I play for the people who, I want to interact and conversate with and talk to. So
Mm.
yeah.
Ooh, I can appreciate that. And I want to ask the last couple questions before we start wrapping this
Mhm.
conversation up. The first of which is the name you use in VRChat. Where'd it come from, and why do you still use it?
I made it on the spot when I made my VRChat account.
Mm.
That's it. Uh, I didn't even know it was a VRChat account too. So in like like Western U.S. like Vancouver and stuff like Cascadia. And I'm like I had no clue about that until I made my name. I I, I honestly have no clue why I even came up with it, but it's fine. It's unique enough, and you can just say Cass because that's usually easier. And uh, it stuck, and I don't see a reason to change it. So it's that simple.
Hmm. Well, thank you for explaining that. And the avatar you're in, why do you use it? And is there anything about it that means anything to you?
Yeah. Um, I I used to not only I used to use my models because I felt like I needed to since I spent all this time making it.
Mm.
But it's kind of changed from that. And I've had spurts where I use like other models that aren't mine, but
Mm.
I've kind of come to like actually just like my models specifically. Like as much as I like other people and appreciate other people's work, I just really like my models that I make
Mm.
because I make what I like. And so it's like if I saw this, but someone else is selling it, I would still buy it and use it. Um, so it's as simple as like, and I don't use my models because I feel like, oh, it's a representation of me or like it like I I don't have this connection to like my VR persona like a lot of people do, which there's nothing
Mm.
like wrong with it. I've always been very grounded in reality. Like even when I'm sitting in VR, I'm not imagining my character talking. I'm imagining me in a headset talking.
Mm.
That's just how I am. And so I'm very myself whether I'm in VR or outside. Like there's no difference with me other than like I have a 3D model on instead. Um,
Mm.
so I wear my models because I I'm proud of what I make. I like to show it off to people. I like being able to bring it up. I'm like, oh hey, I made a model. And I like the look of the characters. And if I can't see anyone else using them, at least I can see myself using them. So
Mm. Well, I appreciate you explaining both the name and the avatar. Is the question earlier on, I always wondered why do people represent themselves the way they do? And I never found any source, so I find it very interesting to find why do you represent yourself this way? Why do you
mm,
have a name? What makes you choose the avatar? I like it. It's interesting. At least to me it is anyway. So I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah. A lot of people have different reasons why they like to use like avatars. I remember when I first started playing this game, I didn't understand that at first. Like to me, it's always very disconnected. But I've come to realize like it is very important and like foundational thing for a lot of people, which I respect. And sometimes like people use it as a conversation starter. Sometimes people use it as like an extension or to like show people how they want to be viewed,
Mm.
or like or yeah, or something like along those lines. For me, I'm pretty unique because I make my own stuff, so it's
Mm.
most people don't have like the option to like be in a position that I'm in. But I think even if I didn't make 3D models, I would still use something similar to this, just
Mm.
because I just like using the characters that I find interesting.
Mm. Understandable. So with
Mhm.
that being said, if the audience wishes to reach out and find you or anything you're working on, where can they go?
Yeah. So I have a YouTube. It's just youtube.com/c/Cascadian. I have a booth that's called, I think basically everything is just Cascadian on everything. I have a booth, I have a YouTube. I have a Discord server, which is linked on like all my different sites. And if you want to contact me directly on Discord, you can just Cascadian on Discord too. I have a community of people who I have it like in my Discord where I like socialize a bit with, but I mostly just keep to myself and I try to make tutorials on my YouTube and I try to like post what I'm working on, but oh yeah, and also Twitter, I think it's Cascadian VR. So
Mm. Well, thank you very much, and it's much appreciated you coming on. It was an honor to hear your
Yeah,
tale,
thank you
your
as well.
story, and everything.
It was
So
an
thank
honor.
you. Oh, well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
No problem. And for you, the audience, if you enjoyed anything that Cascadian had to say or the avatar they're in, please go in the description down below. If you go to YouTube, scroll down and go to description. Show more. We have a easy place for you to find it. It's guest links. One easy place. Everything will be there for you to click and find out. If you're on Spotify, same thing, but in the episode description, not the video description. It'll be there for you to find. And this is also the point where we'll kind of interact with the audience a bit. So my question for you is, what was the first model that you used in VR, be VRChat or whatever platform you're on? I'd love to hear what it is and why you chose that one specifically. And always remember to support the artists in VR. Without them, there wouldn't be models, worlds, or games for you to play. So support them. With that being said, have a good rest of your day.
I wonder if you can ride the train and go inside the fucking over there. That'd be cool.
That would be cool. How big
It
that wall is.
goes
though.
in there and goes around. Why? And it goes around.
Oh, it does. Holy shit.
Fuck yeah, it goes fucking around. I don't know where it goes. Like I said, I just got here. I don't know where everything is.
Huh.
I have to check this place out.
Definitely. We're going to have to.
There's another one. There's another one I got to show you that it's
Oh?
called the, yeah, hold on. Another one is called the Cozy Woods. That one's cool.
Oh, okay. We're definitely going to have to check that out too. There's a bunch we're going to have to check out.
Yeah, there's some new ones in.